Okay, we're going to have a story now. So, are we sitting comfortably?
Yes.
Then we'll begin. Meg PHILP.
This story comes from the country of Angola in the continent of Africa. And it's a traditional folk tale, and it goes something like this. There was once a girl, long, long ago, in a village who was known for her beauty. She had such large eyes that whenever she looked on any of the young men in the marketplace, they forgot where they were and couldn't speak. She was beautiful and she was of marrying age. But that summer, they had no rains. The drought went on and on. The rivers dried up. Country was dusty instead of green. And nobody had time to think of weddings and marriage when they were wondering where their next meal would come from. And as for the girl, she had the job of finding water for the family. So instead of dreaming of what her life might be like with a husband, she scoured the edges of the river looking for water. She carried a heavy water pot strapped to her back, and as she walked along the riverbank, she would look for signs that might mean a trap of water, and she would fill what she could into the water jar. She didn't go back unless it was nearly full, so she spent many a long hour collecting water. One day, she had been searching so long she almost gave up. She came to a bend in the dry riverbed, and there seemed to be a pool of mud, and she looked at it. And then all of a sudden, with a flip and a flap, a fish rose up from the mud and spoke to her and said, "Give me your water jar, I'll fill it for you." Oh, the girl was taken aback. A fish that spoke. Oh, and it said it again. "Give me your water jar, I'll get water." She put it forward, and with a flip and a flap and a flash, the fish disappeared and came back up through the mud. And when she looked in the water jar, it was clear. And when she tasted it, it was sweet water. She thanked him, and the fish disappeared. When she went home that night, the family were so pleased to see her, and when they saw that the water jar was filled and they tasted it, they said, "Where did you get this water?" She just shook her head and nothing. Well, she went back to exactly the same place the next day, and she called out. She thought of a name for the fish. "Kazumba, Kazumba." It means lovely one. And as she stood there, up came the fish, and she looked up. He was beautiful. He had large glowing eyes, and his skin was smooth as the sky, but with rainbow colours. "Ah," he said, "you want more water? Yes, give me your water jar." And once again he filled it. And the girl took it and thanked him. And she took her time going home, so she wasn't too soon. And again, her parents quizzed her. Where did you find such beautiful water? Everybody else is having trouble getting water, and here's this cool, sweet water. And the girl said, "Oh, I just found it." Well, she went back again. Every day she looked forward to seeing the fish. She got fond of him. And on the seventh day, they embraced, and she became his wife. She said nothing of this to her family. But her father wasn't sure. He was was a man of substance in the village, and he had a few tricks up his sleeve. He was a medicine come witch doctor, and he was sure that the girl was in league with some evil spirits. And so he called her brother and said, I need you. You will go on an errand for me and report what you see. And the next morning, when the girl went off with the water jar, he turned her brother into a fly. And as a fly, he flew on the lip of her water jar and went with her through the dry trees and along the riverbank. And he watched, and he saw the fish and his sister embrace. He flew quickly back and reported to the father. So when the girl came back again with the sweet water, people were rather quiet. The mother and father had had a talk. My daughter married to a fish. What will happen if the word gets out? No man will want to marry her. And if the village finds out, we will be so shamed we'll have to leave. No, no, something must be done, said the mother. So the father had a plan. The next morning he said to the girl, you stay, you're not going anywhere today. Your brother and I have an errand. And the brother took the father to the place where the fish would appear. And the brother called out, Kazumba, Kazumba, and up came the fish, and the father got a big stick and beat the life out of him. When he was quite dead, the two of them picked him up and carried him back to the village. The girl was outside the hut, and she was pounding what they had of corn. And when she looked up at her father, he threw the fish in front of her and said, there's your husband, that's an end to it. She burst into tears. His skin that had been so shining and rainbow-like was withering. The eyes that used to glow with love were dull and lifeless. She cried and she thought, I have to leave. She picked up the fish by herself and she walked away. No one stopped her. She walked the river, what was left of the river, and she walked and wondered what would happen to the child she was bearing if they did this to the father. What was to become of her? And she walked up that river. She knew nothing could bring him back. She knew nothing could save her now. There was no medicine. As patient as she was and as willing as she was, there was nothing she could do. So she walked on until she came to where the waters were flowing. And she walked on until the waters were deep enough. And she walked on into that river until those waters flowed up and over her head. And as they did, she called his name, Kazumba, and lifted him up and let him go. And when that happened, she, before her death, gave birth to these magical green buds. They floated on the surface of the river and opened up into golden, glowing flowers. And that, they say, is how water lilies came to be on the earth. And that is where they came from, and that is where they are to this day.
So sad.
Sorry about that.
I could write a better ending.
Tell me later.
Bye.
Maybe I'm not sorry.